So we're going to transition for 2 pieces right now away from music to some spoken reflections. And I'd like to bring up my cousins Pennie Senouci, and Helen. So Pennie and Helen are the daughters of my dad's brother, Ed, who's, if you've heard my dad tell any stories, I'm sure you've heard stories about Uncle Ed. So they're Uncle Ed's daughters. Pennie and Helen, you can come up. The New Year's Eve story, those of you who've heard about the Times Square, the ball dropping, that's their dad. Okay. So they're going to come up and just, we wanted to include some just personal reflection about Danny, and they grew up with us in San Diego. And now I've moved away to Denver, but it's nice to have them back here for this event.
Thanks, everybody. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Helen, and this is my sister, Pennie. We're 2 of Danny's cousins from the Riley side, and there are quite a few of us in the extended Riley clan. Some of you are here today. My sister Pennie and I are some of the only Riley cousins that actually sort of grew up with Lacey and Danny here in San Diego. That's not completely accurate. Since we lived in Poway, they lived in Chula Vista, so we're separated by quite a bit of freeways. But not sure if you can tell. I don't think we look that old yet, but Pennie and I are at least a decade older than Danny. So when I say that we grew up together, it's not like we cousins had sleepovers and birthday parties together. It's more that our families always spent time together on holidays.
So at least once a year, pretty much every year, was a tradition to drive down to Uncle Frank's house and have Christmas or Thanksgiving or Easter together. We'd all get dressed up and pile into one of my dad Ed's old cars and drive down to Uncle Frank's house and hang out from about 3 p.m. until dinner was done. And being the Riley family, the adults usually spent the afternoon drinking while the holiday meal cooked. And since everyone liked drinking, we usually didn't get started until dinner, until after sunset. So I remember that us 4 cousins were often relegated to the kids' table, and that was kind of a contentious thing because Helen and I just figured that we were a little bit too old for a kids' table with Danny and Alicia. So, and after dinner, Danny and Alicia would usually sit down at the piano or with one of their instruments and show what they'd been learning in lessons or stuff, and Helen and I usually just watched because we were kind of shy and awkward. But hey, today staying on the same stage as Jack Johnson, so thank you for that, Jack. Thank you for that, Danny. And eventually, I think, one of the Riley adults, would usually start singing My Wild Irish Rose, and the other 3 adults would join in together in song. So anyway, in a bit more serious tone, when I think of Danny, I always think of him in the context of these annual family traditions and how he was always there, like Helen and I were, just year after year, holiday after holiday. So what's interesting for me, having most of my memories of Danny placed in that context of family, is that being here today with you guys, with Alicia, Uncle Frank, and Aunt Maggie, it's as if Danny isn't even gone. I associate him with so much with you guys and his family, it's really almost impossible to imagine that he isn't here. As Alicia said, Helen and I don't live in San Diego anymore, and so when we flew in from Colorado yesterday, we stopped by Uncle Frank's house. And it's the same one that we'd spent, 10 or 20, maybe more holiday dinners together at. And I don't think the kids' table is there any longer, but a lot of the house has remained the same. And so for me, it's really like stepping back in time to when we were all together back in those days for Christmas or Easter or for Thanksgiving. And because Danny was always there, part of the family crowd, to do this now, 10 years on from the day he died, it just feels so weird, but it's just like he should just walk in and appear at any moment and join us here today. And last night, when I was lying in bed thinking about this celebration today, I was kind of half awake thinking, and I imagined that Danny would actually walk in and everybody would be so happy to see him. It would just be like he'd returned from being away for a long time. He'd have his crazy hair and his beanie, and he'd have that huge grin and his cute smile, and he'd just give you that big hug that he would always do. And when you'd ask him how it was going, he'd just respond in the same always modest and very unassuming way about whatever awesome thing he was doing. And then I sort of woke back up and I realized that Danny was gone. But I wish that Danny were here now instead of us standing here together to memorialize him 10 years after his death. But it's really amazing how many of you guys have come out today and how we all have our unique and distinct stories and connections to him. And so with all of us gathered here today in memory of Danny, it's as if really only the physical manifestation of him has changed.
Now, for us, Danny's here because we see his family. We see Uncle Frank and Aunt Maggie and Alicia and all of his friends and people that he's touched throughout his life. And he lives in all of you and in all of us. So for you, it could be hearing his voice on a song or seeing his, a guitar that he played, or even seeing literally through the eyes he donated when he passed away. And Danny's gone, but with us still today. We keep him inside of us in our hearts, in our minds, and our memories. And like this, we keep Danny alive. That most of our family knows this verse. It used to describe our Uncle Billy, but it applies to Danny as well. Alive to the day, death silenced his song, yet he sings in the breath of other voices. We love you and we miss you, Danny, but we know you won't be forgotten. Thank you.
Thank you.